Hi everyone, it's Lisa from IDreaminSoap. Welcome to my channel. Today's soap is part of the 2020 YouTube soap collaboration Flower Power, where we've got a whole group of soapers who have worked hard to bring you a lovely soapy video inspired by flowers. There's a hashtag in my description. If you click on that, it will take you to a playlist where you can see everybody's videos. My inspiration was spring here in the UK, where we often get loads of trees filled with glorious cherry blossoms, and they're so beautiful. So as part of the collaboration, we had to fulfill certain criteria, and I've done that by using green as the grass for my soap. I've also picked pink from the other choice of colours that we were given to make the cherry blossoms. We had to use some sort of natural element to the soap, so I've used cocoa powder to give me the brown colouring I need for the trunk and the branches of my tree. And then finally we had to use either an embed or do some piping. I've done both of these. My tree is an embed that goes all the way through the soap, and I've also used my Tiffany sides technique to pipe cherry blossoms all the way down the side of the soap. I hope you enjoy this video. Come on, let's go and make some soap. Now, before I start my actual soap making, I just wanted to mention I made my soap several months ago, and then recently I saw another tree soap that was made by Etsuko Watanabe. Now, Etsuko is an amazing soap artist, and I looked on her YouTube channel and she actually made her tree before mine. Now, Etsuko does actually make her tree in a different way to what I do, and I'm going to leave a link to her YouTube channel down in my description so you can see how she does hers. But also as well, she actually sells the little moulds that she uses to make the trees, so you might want to go on there and buy some of those if you fancy doing this sort of design yourself. I started off my soap by making a tree embed in a mould that I've made myself. And I made mine by cutting out lots and lots of trees out of foamy sheet and sticking them all together and pouring some silicone in the middle. Then when I had my little silicone tree, I set that inside some PVC pipe and made my mould by pouring more silicone around that. I've then taken the mould that I made and I've split it so it can open up like a book so I can get the tree out. And then to make it back into an embed that's not going to all flow out of the mould, I'm going to take the pipes that I made it in, just cover those silicone moulds in some oil so they slide nicely in and out, and pop them back into the pipes, and then I can fill them with soap batter. Now, to fill the requirement to use something natural, I'm going to use cocoa powder to give me the colour for my tree trunk. And then to make sure that that cocoa is blended in really well and I don't get any speckles, I'm just going to use a palette knife on an acrylic sheet to really smush it all together. This is something I picked up from Terry at Tree Marie Soapworks. Now, because my tree trunks are all one colour, the brown, I'm just going to add that cocoa straight into my oils and blitz it round. And then I'll just add my lye solution and bring it to trace. Pop in my fragrance oil, and then I can fill my embeds up and leave them to set. So the next day I'm going to start off by making the cherry blossom for my trees, and I'm making this out of soap dough. My soap dough is just literally soap from my normal recipe that I keep sealed up. I actually vacuum seal it in some vacuum seal bags and it keeps it lovely and workable. And I'm just going to make some small blossoms first of all. So I'm going to take some dark pink, some light pink and some white and just twist them together into a little sausage shape that will fit into my extruder. Now, this is the extruder set I use, and I'll leave a link to it down in the descriptions. Now, the extruder disc I'm going to use for this is just sort of like the little three-leafed flower, so I'm going to use that for the smaller cherry blossoms that I'm going to do. So I'll just extrude some of that multicoloured dough, and then I'm going to cut the pieces roughly into the length that I want them, but I don't cut them to the precise length. I leave them so I can trim them later when they're a little bit firmer. And then I'm going to combine two extruded discs together, separated by a metal washer, to make the larger cherry blossoms. So to put this together so that it works, you need to take your extruder cap and then put the hexagon shape in first, then your metal washer. It does need to be a metal washer, a rubber one will just squidge out as you're doing your extruding, and then you put your sort of little dotty one in after that. So we'll then combine that with a sort of soap dough sausage roll type thing to get our cherry blossom effect. So basically just roll out the colour you want on the outside as a thin bit of soap dough, and then the colour you want on the inside, kind of like a little sausage, wrap one round the other and then pop it into your extruder. Now how this works is as the dough meets that first disc, that's the one with like the 7 separate little holes in it, if you had that on its own it would just extrude you 7 strings of soap dough. So what we do is by combining it with that second disc, that then takes those separate strings and it squashes them all together and surrounds them with that other colour. And then I'm just rolling them very gently just to make sure that they're nice and straight and good to go in the mould. So there's all our embeds done. So what I'm going to do now is what I call the Tiffany sides technique down the side of a mould. So I'm going to make it that the entire side of the bar of this soap has cherry blossoms all the way down it. So I'm going to start off by making up a very small batch of soap batter, and I'm going to use this to pipe those cherry blossoms. So I'm just mixing the batter together that I need, and then when I'm happy that I've got it emulsified, I'm going to split it off into 2 separate portions for the different colours that I want. And then I'm going to use this first portion to pipe the outside of my cherry blossoms. So I need them to be white, so I'm just going to add some titanium dioxide. And then I'm going to bring them to the trace that I need. Now you have to be really careful about the trace with this technique in that you don't want it too fluid, because the idea is these outsides are going to make a little dam to hold the rest of the flooded batter that we're going to put inside them. But also you don't want it too thick, because when it's thick it doesn't stick nicely to the sides of your soap mould and you end up with little air bubbles and gaps and a rather rough looking finish. To pipe the border of my flowers, I'm going to use the number 1 writing tip. Now you may think this is really tiny, but I have done this technique quite a number of times and it's actually the perfect size to use. I'm using my acrylic mould from Custom Craft Tools, and it's great because I can actually take it apart and also see through the sides. Now if you've not got a mould like this, you could still do this technique. You just need to get yourself sort of a piece of acetate or something and use that and then slip it inside your own mould rather than taking your existing mould apart. So I've made myself up a little template. Now I'm not going to pipe every single one of these exactly, but it's just there to give me a rough guide about the size of the flower that I want to pipe. I'm then going to take a little bit of that remaining batter and colour it a dark pink and pop it in my piping bag. And then I'll pipe a dark centre into the middle of each of the flowers. And then I'll just take that final little bit of batter I've got and colour it a pale pink, And then I need to keep the trace on this really fluid because I want it to flood and fill all of the flower shapes up. If your trace is at all thick, then you're not going to get this sort of flooding effect, and then you're going to end up with lots of gaps down the side of your soap. I then let the sides set up for a little while so that they're not going to run down the side of the mould when I rebuild it. And then I'm actually going to make these soaps horizontally rather than vertically, so therefore I've divided my mould up with just some bits of foam board so I can get my 3 sort of sections for my bars. And then to start off the body of my soap, I want to make some grass for the trees to sit on. So I'm just going to choose from my colour swatches a couple of greens so I can have some sort of mottling in my grass. So the colours I'm going to use both come from You Make It Up, which is a European company. I think they're actually based in Spain, and they're Lime and Emerald Lagoon. And I've dispersed them into a little bit of olive oil, and then I've just mixed up my batter. I'm going to let this get to a pretty thick trace, and then I'm just going to gently mix the 2 colours together before I pop them into the mould. So because of the way I'm doing my soaps, with them being a horizontal cut, I'm having to sort of pop the grass element onto those sort of little shelves that I've made, and I'm trying to do it at a bit of a weird angle for me, just so there's some chance of you getting to see it on the video. And then at last, time to take those tree embeds that it seemed ages ago that I made and just pop them into the mould. And now to make up the sky to pour around the trees, and I'm using electric blue, once again from You Make It Up, and some titanium dioxide. I've calculated the amount of oils and lye that I need for my 3 blue segments. I'm just going to mix this all together very lightly and then add the colour. And then I'll just split off the first third of the batter and just add the fragrance to that bit only. And then I'm going to do just the tiniest bit of stick blending just to make sure that I do actually have a trace before I pour it in the mould. So I've got my mould with my grass and my trees, and also my nice tray of cherry blossom embeds. So it's just a case of pouring this very fluid batter in and getting the embeds poked in all around the tree before everything starts to stiffen up. And then I'll just repeat for the other 2 trees. And then just finish off with the last remaining bit of the blue batter. And then once everything's in, I'm going to cover it with some cling wrap, and then I'm going to wrap it and I'm going to C-pop it overnight, so into the oven at 170 degrees C, 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Turn the oven off as soon as the mould goes in there and leave it overnight. And then the next day I'll unmould it and then just remove those little dividers, which come out nice and easily if you've wrapped them in some cling wrap. And then I'm just going to obviously tip each little bar up and chop it into 3 separate bars of soap. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, it would be great if you left me a thumbs up. If you've got any questions or comments, then please leave them in the comments section below. I'm really good at getting back to people, so I will reply to your comment. If you'd like to see what I'm making in the future, why not subscribe to my channel? Thanks for watching everyone. Happy soaping!